Hey horror fans, Boardnell back with you, and I'm going to be talking about, oh great, another film based on the pandemic. It is called Sick. It's a new horror release that went straight to Peacock in the States, so if you're not in the States and you don't have access to Peacock, then I guess just seek it out. It's co-written by Kevin Williamson, famous for the Scream movies, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Dawson's Creek, bunch of other things, so he's the big name attached to it. The setup is then you've got two close friends, two college students during the pandemic. So you have Parker and you have Mary of self-isolating from the rest of the world. Home which belongs to like relatives of Parker, then they're not really alone. There's another character called DJ who is an ex-boyfriend of Parker's, and they're sort of going through a breakup, but he hasn't accepted that. She wants different things. She wants a more casual, open style relationship. He's taking it more seriously, and it references the pandemic a lot, but the theme of the pandemic in the film doesn't really become clear till the final 10-15 minutes when it's revealed what the twist of it is. And this is a typically, January style, straight to streaming release. It feels like it, it looks like it. It looks very cheap. There's no particular style or panache to it. Like, there's just very little interest in it. It has one or two redeeming moments, but generally speaking, it's very bargain basement sort of feel. The acting is a bit like wooden, a bit weak. It is not the worst you're going to see, but like there's very little going on with the main actors or characters, very little to draw you into their characters or to really care. Generic is the word, like, because at times the horror scenes feel like that. It just feels like it builds no real suspense or tension. You have nothing tied up in the characters, so you probably don't care if they live or die. Like, the film doesn't spend a lot of time with them, but your standard sort of slasher type characters, but not entertaining in any ways. Shallow, but they're shallow in a way which is just almost like shrug your shoulders, like not very interesting. Like, the only characteristics we get be the more casual sort of shallow type one. But once again, she isn't shallow in like a over the top slasher movie type way that makes it entertaining. Considering this is co-written by Kevin Williamson, and he's a guy who's got a good track record of really making distinct, entertaining characters, and at least characters you remember. Really, the characters in this you're gonna forget like 20 minutes after you've seen the film. So that's Parker, and Mary really is just her sort of close friend who is quite supportive, but like you don't really get a great handle on her. DJ Parker, the names themselves just feel like so lazy. You really get a sense of mood or atmosphere. You don't really get a sense of any like distinct characteristics. The other thing about it, because I said the pandemic becomes more relevant in the twist of the film and what actually happens, which is fine, but for a lot of the film, it just feels like they're just shoehorning the pandemic in. Like, there's not enough of a reason for it, because you get stuff mentioned on TVs in the background, like politics going on in the other thing is, you've got to say, do people really want another film sort of referencing the pandemic here and there and everywhere? I mean, if you're going to do it, do something more interesting with it, but people don't reminding of it at this background, and you get certain gags, but the gags for the most part are pretty weak, which I'm doing 2020. Or Quarantine Boo, which Mary says at one point. I didn't care at all about Parker and DJ and their whole thing. It's just really dull. The gag of the film is when, like, Parker's trying to escape from the killer, and she bumps into the Jane Addams character, who it's revealed in a twist is like one of the villains of the film, like this family of villains as it turns out. And I was pleased to see Jane Addams in the film because she's a great actress, really underrated. But like the whole thing with her in the car, because like Parker heads towards the car and wants to get in, and she insists that Parker puts the mask on before she gets in the car, even though she knows this girl's in danger. And that sort of makes sense with the twist of the film, but it's just a funny gag. Like, that's the best gag of the movie. And there's certain things where it's just commenting on the lifestyle of the pandemic, like when DJ shows up out of nowhere, like surprises Mary and Parker. They insist in, put the mask on, keep your distance. And in this film, because it's once again one of these like posh sort of getaway type houses, belongs to rich people by the looks of it. And I think it's just become a bit of a cliche just to keep doing that, but also at least in certain other films they might use the space a bit more, they might have a bit more of a style, but they never really use the space that well. There's no personality, not only to the main characters, but to the killers, at least the initial killers in the masks. Like later on when you meet Jane Addams and her husband, there's a little bit more personality with them, but that's late in the film. Like the main killers and them in their masks, there's no person. I mean, they look a bit like ninjas. No great horror scenes to speak of. It's just all pretty weak and not that engaging to watch, really. Or even though she doesn't think that she's infected, she apparently infected this guy who she had a bit of a fling with at the party, and that becomes a big part of the film because she like posted this thing on social media about them hooking up. So the parents of the guy, I can't remember his name now, but they revealed and he got infected with COVID and was killed. And they're preaching about all the, because apparently she kissed a lot of different guys at this party, and it's revealed that she like infected a lot of them type thing. So that's the whole twist, which is not a bad twist in a way, but the trouble is it comes so late in the film and so much of what you've been watching is like mediocre, a little dull the way it plays out. There's no real surprises or suspense to this film. That's part of the problem, and a lot of the social media stuff has been done to death. It's sort of weird, even though it feels quite modern because of the age we live in. Like, this stuff has been done to death already. It feels like this stuff has been, being riffed off for at least a good 10 years. The death scene at the beginning is in masks, like killing someone in his apartment. Now that doesn't really come back up, so I don't know what that was about, why he was killed, whether he's another one who was like spreading the virus. Pretty good idea for a horror movie. It's just because it takes so long to get there, I've sort of lost interest in the movie, then it doesn't really pay off that well as much with it as they could have done anyway. Like, in a way, they could have just made the whole movie about that, or at least a good like half an hour, 40 minutes. It's not terrible. I've seen much worse, but this definitely feels like a January release. So I'll give it 4 out of 10. That is Sick. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. You can also check out my review of another January release. That is Megan. That's now up on the channel if you want to see what I thought about that film. But keep watching horror movies, and I'll be back soon. Bye.